Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into something I think a lot of people don't really understand, sex and love addiction.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking specifically at how it's experienced by people in the SLAA fellowship.
Okay.
And we're lucky enough to have a collection of personal stories from members, so we
Hmm.
can hear
Oh, wow.
directly from those who've lived it,
Yeah, that's really powerful to hear those firsthand accounts. And it really emphasizes that this addiction
Yeah.
isn't just about how much sex someone's having.
Right.
It's really about those underlying compulsions
Yeah.
and the fact that they just can't control certain behaviors.
It's almost like something overrides their better judgment,
Right.
and then it leads them to do things that they know are harmful to themselves and others.
Exactly.
And that kind of brings us to SLAA. Can you explain a little bit about what it is, how it helps people struggling with this?
Sure. SLAA stands for Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous,
Okay.
and it's a 12-step fellowship for people who are recovering from sex and love addiction.
Okay.
Now, it's based on the same principles as Alcoholics Anonymous,
I see.
with a focus on acknowledging the addiction, surrendering to a higher power,
Okay.
and working those 12 steps with the sponsor.
Okay. So you said surrender, and that's often misunderstood, right?
Yeah.
What does it actually mean in this context?
That's a good question.
I mean, it's not about giving up, is it?
No, not at all. Surrendering in SLAA,
Okay.
it's not about admitting defeat.
Right.
It's more about acknowledging that you can't control this addiction on your own.
I see.
You're letting go of that illusion of control
Yeah.
and opening yourself up to a power greater than yourself
Okay.
for guidance and support.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's funny because this whole letting go of control thing, that comes up a lot in these stories,
It does.
especially when you look at the cycle of addiction.
Oh, absolutely. The
Uh,
cycle typically starts with this buildup of tension and craving.
Right.
Then there's the acting out on those compulsions,
Uh-huh.
which brings temporary relief. But then, of course, it's quickly followed by
Yeah.
guilt, shame, and remorse.
Right.
And that just fuels the cycle all over.
It's just a never-ending
Yeah.
cycle. And one thing that strikes me just reading through these stories is the range of behaviors
Oh, yeah.
that fall under this umbrella of sex and love addiction.
Mhm.
We see everything from compulsive masturbation
Right.
to obsessive romantic fantasies
Mhm.
to dangerous or inappropriate sexual encounters,
Mhm.
even prostitution.
Yes.
It's a really broad spectrum.
It is a very broad spectrum. And that's one of the things that makes this addiction
Yeah.
so challenging, to define it, to diagnose it.
Right.
There's no single profile
Yeah.
of what a sex and love addict looks like.
Right.
One person might struggle with voyeurism,
Yeah.
while another is trapped in a cycle of serial relationships,
Right.
each one more intense and destructive than the last.
Wow. So it's not necessarily about the behavior.
Exactly.
It's about the underlying compulsion,
Compulsion, yeah.
that feeling of being driven
Yes.
by something they can't control.
Right.
There's this one story that really stood out to me. This man who felt compelled to grab women on the street.
Oh, yeah. That story is particularly jarring
Yeah.
because it really highlights just how contradictory this addiction can be.
Right.
He felt this urge, this compulsion to act out in that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he drew his own moral line at having affairs.
Wow.
It really shows how this addiction can twist someone's sense of right and wrong.
It's almost like the addiction creates its own rules,
It does.
its own justification.
Right.
Which makes it hard to even tell what's healthy and what's harmful.
Exactly.
I wonder if that's why it's so hard for people to even recognize that they have a problem.
It absolutely can be. There's often a lot of denial
Yeah.
and minimization involved.
Yeah.
Especially in the early stages, people might tell themselves, yeah, I'm just highly sexual.
Right.
Or my behavior's no big deal. It's not hurting anyone.
Right. It's fine.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these stories so valuable, I think.
They do.
Because they break down those misconceptions
Yes.
and they show how real and honestly devastating
Yeah.
sex and love addiction can be.
It really is. The impact on people's lives can be significant. And it's not just about the individual who's struggling, right?
Right.
It's about that ripple effect on their relationships.
Their families.
Their families, their careers, everything.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. It's really about that deep sense of pain and trauma.
Yeah, a lot of these stories, they link their addictive behaviors back to
Yeah.
difficult childhoods, experiences of abuse, neglect, or just this feeling of inadequacy.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to fill this void,
Right.
numb the pain,
Mm-hmm.
find some kind of validation through these
Right.
intense experiences.
Whether it's sexual encounters or those obsessive romantic pursuits,
Right.
Yeah, there's one story that really illustrates this. This woman shares her father's poem,
Oh, wow.
and this poem talks about desperately searching for love
Hmm.
to still the pain. It's such a powerful image,
Yeah.
and it makes you think about how these
Hmm.
early experiences can shape us.
Absolutely. And it speaks to that,
Yeah.
fundamental human need for connection.
Right.
But when those needs aren't met in healthy ways or when
Yeah.
they're met with trauma,
Yeah.
it can create that vulnerability
Hmm.
to addiction.
And that brings us back to SLAA
Yeah.
and the 12 steps,
Right.
because it's not just about stopping the behaviors. It's
Exactly.
about addressing those
Yes.
underlying issues.
Those wounds that are driving the addiction.
Yeah.
The steps really provide that framework for
Right.
self-reflection, for understanding why you do what you do,
Mhm.
and then developing those healthier coping mechanisms.
One of the core principles is finding a higher power.
Yes.
Can you talk a bit more about what that means and how it helps people in recovery?
Yeah.
Because I think for some people, the idea of a higher power
Right.
can be a little bit off-putting.
I understand that.
Yeah.
In SLAA, a higher power.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a religious concept.
Right.
It can be anything that represents a force greater than yourself.
Okay.
Something you can turn to for strength and guidance.
I see.
For some people, it's nature.
Yeah.
For others, it's the fellowship itself.
Okay.
Or even just a belief in a loving universe.
So it's about finding something outside of yourself
Yeah.
to provide support
Exactly.
and help you stay on track.
It's about recognizing you don't have to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
There's a power greater than your addiction
Right.
that can help you heal and find freedom.
And that's where sponsorship comes in.
That's right.
Someone who's worked the steps
Yes.
can guide you through the process.
Exactly. Sharing their experience, strength, and hope.
Like a mentor, someone who's been there.
Yeah.
I imagine that sense of community is really important.
It's vital. For many people in SLAA, it's
Yeah.
the first time they've ever been able to talk openly,
Wow.
honestly, about their struggles without judgment or shame.
That's huge.
They find a sense of belonging,
Yeah.
of being understood.
Right.
That's incredibly powerful for healing.
There's one story where this member talks about resisting the urge to call a former lover
Yes.
and the sense of empowerment they felt just from making that choice.
Yeah. It's a beautiful example of how
Yeah.
recovery isn't just about abstaining, from certain behaviors. It's
Yeah.
about gaining control over your life, your choices, your responses.
Taking your power back.
It's about rewiring your brain, breaking free from those ingrained patterns of addiction,
Yeah.
and developing new, healthier ways of relating to yourself and the world.
Another story that struck me was this woman who describes her withdrawal experience as going sane.
Wow.
It makes you think about withdrawal in a whole new light.
Does.
It's not just about those physical symptoms.
Right.
There's a mental and emotional shift.
That's so true. Withdrawal can be so challenging.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emotional upheaval, cravings, temptations.
Right.
But it's also a sign of healing,
Right.
a necessary step towards recovery.
Yeah.
Like your body and mind are resetting,
Right.
breaking free from the grip of the addiction,
Yeah.
beginning that process of repair.
It's like coming out of a fog
Yes.
and finally seeing things clearly.
And that clarity
Yeah.
is something that comes up again and again in these stories.
Right. Especially when it comes to the difference between
Yes.
genuine intimacy
Yeah.
and that counterfeit intimacy that addiction offers.
That's a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
Sex and love addiction, it often involves relationships
Mm-hmm.
that are intense, passionate, all-consuming,
Right.
but they lack that foundation of trust,
Yeah.
respect, and emotional vulnerability.
They're missing the core.
It's a counterfeit intimacy.
Right.
Because it's based on neediness, control, and the pursuit of that external validation,
Yeah.
rather than a genuine connection.
Chasing a high that you never really reach.
Exactly.
Always searching for that next fix.
Yes.
That temporary feeling of connection or validation.
Right.
And it just leaves you empty.
And emptier in the end.
Yeah. And it's not just romantic relationships.
Yeah, it's not.
It can be friendships, family dynamics, even workaholism.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about that underlying need
Right.
for external validation.
Like something's missing.
Yes, that feeling of being incomplete
Yeah.
without someone or something to fill that void.
One story talks about how through SLAA,
Yeah.
she was able to create a life that was
Yeah.
born of her own needs,
Mhm.
where she discovered herself
Right.
and found joy outside of romantic relationships.
That's a powerful testament to the transformative power of recovery.
It is.
It's not just about stopping the behaviors. It's about reclaiming your life,
Yeah.
rediscovering those passions, building self-worth that comes from within.
Instead of chasing it from external sources,
Exactly.
becoming the author of your own story.
Yeah.
Instead of letting addiction write it.
And these stories offer a glimpse
Yeah.
into the challenges and the triumphs of long-term sobriety.
Because recovery is a journey, it's not a destination.
It's a process. It's
There are
ongoing.
going to be setbacks, temptations, moments of doubt.
Of course.
What's inspiring is seeing how these individuals develop the resilience
Yes.
to navigate those challenges.
Absolutely. One story that highlights this is about a man
Okay.
who, even after years of sobriety, experienced withdrawal symptoms.
Oh, wow.
But instead of giving in,
Yeah.
he reached out for support, used the tools he learned,
Right.
and rode out the wave.
So powerful.
It's a powerful example of how recovery is about managing those cravings, those triggers, instead of letting them control you.
So it's not about never experiencing them.
No.
It's about how you respond.
It's
This shift from being controlled by addiction
Yes.
to taking control of your life.
Exactly.
Like you're building a muscle.
Yeah.
You know? That ability to choose a different path, even when those old urges come knocking.
Right.
All these stories make me think about, like,
Yeah.
societal norms.
Yeah.
What role do they play in sex and love addiction?
That's an interesting point. One member actually talked about how the entertainment industry, with its focus on beauty, sexual conquest, all that, actually fueled his addiction.
It's almost like we're constantly bombarded with this message
Yeah.
that happiness and fulfillment come from external validation,
Mm-hmm.
especially through relationships and sexual experiences.
Right. And if those areas of your life aren't going well,
Yeah.
there's this implication that something's wrong with you.
Yeah, you're not measuring up.
Exactly. It creates this perfect breeding ground for addiction.
Right.
Because you're always striving for something that may be unattainable.
I imagine it makes it even harder to admit you have a problem.
Yeah.
Because you're already feeling ashamed,
Oh, yeah.
embarrassed that you're not living up to these impossible standards.
You're afraid to be judged.
That's why these stories are so powerful, I think.
They are.
They break through that shame and secrecy.
Yeah.
Show you that you're not alone in this.
Other people have faced similar struggles,
Yeah.
and they found a way out.
There's one story about a guy
Yes.
who, at his first SLAA meeting, he felt repulsed
Wow.
by the stories he heard
Really?
because he thought his addiction was somehow more innocent
Wow.
because he hadn't done those same things.
It's interesting, isn't it, how we tend to categorize and compare,
Even with addiction.
even with addiction.
Yeah,
But did his perspective change?
it did. As he listened and learned, he realized
Yeah.
that the underlying compulsions were the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good reminder that addiction doesn't discriminate.
It really doesn't. It affects all kinds of people from all walks of life.
So for our listeners out there
Yes.
who might be struggling with these compulsive behaviors
Yeah.
around sex, love, relationships.
If you feel like you've lost control
Yeah.
or these behaviors are causing pain
Yeah.
in your life or the lives of others,
Reach out. Get help.
reach out. There's no shame in seeking support.
SLAA provides that safe and confidential space
Yes.
to connect with others who get it.
To be understood.
It's about finding a community where
Yeah.
you can be honest
Yes.
without fear of judgment.
And recognizing that recovery is possible.
Absolutely.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
It's not a destination.
It's going to have ups and downs,
It won't be easy,
but
but as we've seen from these stories,
it's so worth it.
it's a journey worth taking.
It's about rediscovering yourself, building a life that's authentic,
Yeah.
meaningful, finding that peace and wholeness that addiction can never give you.
That's right.
These stories give us hope,
Yeah.
show us resilience, the power of human connection.
The power of human connection.
And as we wrap up our deep dives today,
Mm-hmm.
we want to leave you with a question.
Okay.
If we know that addiction often comes from these unmet needs
Yeah.
for love and connection, how can we create a world where those needs are met in healthier ways?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's individuals and as a society.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, but
Yeah.
maybe by working together,
Yes.
we can create a world where addiction has less power
Mm-hmm.
and love has more.
More love. That's what we need.